Miri! Happy New Year!
Happy New... Oh, do we still have to say that? I feel like by the 17th of January we've probably moved past saying Happy New Year. I know, is there a cut-off?
Well, yes, I've been discussing this, but also you and I haven't caught up because, for those listening, Miri and I talk on the phone quite a lot, but we agreed that before this podcast recording we weren't going to speak, so that when we actually jumped on the podcast we had all the goss to share.
Yeah.
So we've not caught up, really.
I think maybe first we've got to say is welcome to the very first episode of This Equestrian Life.
I'm clapping silently.
Clapping. We can clap a little. Our podcast that we have been ruminating on for many months.
It's been a while.
It's been a minute. We have great plans. We want to talk about all things. We feel like our name allows us a good creative license within that. But yeah, we're going to be talking about all things equestrian life, whatever that may cover. And I'm really excited to be here. And thank you so much for being here if you are listening, because you guys, our lovely followers, have made this possible. And we're excited, aren't we?
Yeah. I think what's nice about you and I is we have a relationship that goes back years now. We love the idea of bringing people on to our quote-unquote phone calls. And between the two of us, we've got quite different ends of the spectrum in terms of equestrian experience. You're a professional, you run a yard. I'm a hobby rider with a completely different career. And that, I think, you and I disagree on things relatively often as well. And I think that's actually quite nice. Spicy for the podcast.
We love a fight, don't we?
We love to fight on camera, yeah. It's going to be our favourite thing. Tune in next week when Miri and I fall out and then the podcast goes dead.
The end of the season is going to be a boxing match where we actually just get to punch each other in the face. No, we're kidding. We love each other very dearly. But what we mean is sometimes it's important to challenge people. And we have always had a very open discussion about things. And I think that means balance and fluidity in life. Because it takes all sorts, as I say, often. You meet a lot of people in life, don't you? And some of them you'll agree with and some of them you don't. And it doesn't mean that everybody's wrong or everybody's right, but it just means that you learn new stuff all the time. So, yeah. Should we have a catch-up then? What have you been up to? What's life been throwing at you recently?
Yeah, so before we get into our topic of the day, so I had a bit of a nightmare. So I am someone who's quite I follow the rules. I like to have the rules. And if you've ever used a liner system with rugs, you know that you buy the top rug and then you buy liners of different weights and it's better for storage, easy to swap in and out, whatever. So I found myself in the position when we had this cold snap in the UK a few weeks ago. You guys remember if you're in the UK, it got down to -5 at night, and Harley lives out at night all year round, in during the day, which is fine. He loves that. Had this cold snap a few weeks ago and I have this really fantastic rug, the Comfortech rug from Weatherbeater, which they gifted to me a couple of years ago, and I use it now. It's great.
I have those too. Love
you
them.
Do, because you had them all.
Yeah.
You had all your mares in the burgundy, didn't you?
Yeah.
It was really cute.
Yeah.
Yes. So Harley has one of those, and they are fabulous. But even with the cold weather, I needed something more to go underneath it. So anyway, the long and short of this is I have a Premier Equine liner, and it didn't fit under my Weatherbeater rug. So I was like, well, I'm going to do this properly. I'm going to get the clips moved from one place to another on the liner at the front so that they match up and they fit under my liner system. And I put this on TikTok, and everyone on TikTok was like, why are you even doing it up at the front? Just leave it and do it up at the back. And I was like, well, first of all, I didn't think of that. And second of all, what if it falls back? So I went to my local saddlers and they were like, yeah, no worries, we can do this for you. I was like, great. I was feeling super smug. I was like, I'm going to do it all properly. It's going to be perfect. Pick it up, really excited, take it down to the yard. I'm filming for TikTok to be like, part 2, here's what happened. And it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit because because I didn't check that the buckles would fit, the Velcro could fit through the size of the buckles. So I just spent a tenner getting all this stuff moved, going up and down to the saddlers, talking about it on my channels, and it doesn't even fit. So now I actually can't do them up at the front, so I'm just like everyone else, after telling people that I really didn't want to not do them up at the front. So
that's what you do.
That was my... that's what we're doing. Harley obviously doesn't care. Harley's been great. He's been fabulous. He's just such a poppet. He's turning into a real great adult citizen these days.
That's nice.
Love him.
Got a good brain, that one, hasn't he? Well, I have been finding dead bodies in the woods on a hack. If you follow me on Instagram.
This was a really
I've had quite
scare.
I've had quite a dramatic week, if I'm 100% honest. I started my week getting really shouted at by a lady who I probably shouldn't name now that this is going on a podcast. I put it on my stories, but I won't.
Maybe she'll listen. She'll be our first listener.
Let's go. She won't. She hates me. Hates me. I made myself public enemy number one by her. Long story short, a tree fell down before Christmas and it fell on our fence and I had to get it cut off the fence. Luckily, one of the girls that works for me, her partner's a tree surgeon. Anyway, they came and cut it off the fence. And then I went and found the people who owned the tree. They're quite elderly. I mean, probably late 70s, I would say. And he said, oh yes, no problem. I'll come round with my chainsaw and I'll sort it out. And I said, oh, I don't think you'll manage, but okay. Anyway, they then organised a tree surgeon and there was some sort of a crossing of wires where the tree surgeon thought he was going to be able to drive into the field. Now, if anybody in the UK, and we will talk about this because our topic of today is going to be winter and how to get through it in a successful way, and maybe some tips from us, maybe some advice that we can give on our ways that we're surviving winter. Our fields are wet, like wetter than the sea. I was trying to think of a metaphor there, but I couldn't.
Wetter than water.
Wetter than water. And he was like, yeah, we're definitely going to be able to drive through your field. And I said, I'm really sorry, I can't let you do that because I have to look after my grass, all of these things. Oh dear. World War something broke out. And the lady who came down to discuss this with me because she was so enraged by my boundary setting. What shall I call her? She had a very
Marjorie.
posh British name, but Marjorie, yes. Marjorie was enraged by my boundary of no, you definitely can't go through the field. She called me a silly girl. And then her husband said I was stupid and ridiculous and it's only grass and I'm wasting everyone's time, and this is all at the side of the road at the bottom of the drive from the yard that I rent. And I stood there so bemused by the fact that people spoke to me like this. It was really quite the shock. And anyway, I stood my ground and I said, no, you absolutely cannot go in my field with your 4x4 because you're going to trash it and I'm not interested in fiddling about letting you through all of the gates. It's a complicated situation. And lo and behold, it took them 30 minutes to cut the tree up and chuck it over the fence, and that was the end of that. So, old Marjorie, you can stick that up, you whatever. And I had to ride a load of horses after that, and so I got to the yard and I did a somatic shake. I stood at the top of the barn. I think the girls that work for me must think I'm absolutely balmy, but that's okay. And I literally shook my whole body because did you know that is a response in animals to shake, to let things go? So if a rabbit got chased by a fox and it got away, what it would do is it would go and find itself somewhere safe and then it would shake like shiver essentially. And it's a way of the nervous system letting go of the adrenaline, the cortisol, whatever it is that is pumping around my body, which it was doing because I was like, oh, I can't believe I've been called a silly girl by these old people. This is so unfair. I feel really opposed, and it was really horrid. Yeah. And so I did my little weird shake where I threw my arms around like that. And then I was like, okay, ready to do my day now.
Do you know what?
Rode all the horses and it was great.
I'm so glad you shared that because I was thinking as you were telling that story, I was like, I would really struggle with that. Firstly, so proud of you for setting your boundary. But secondly, I hate confrontation. I think most people listening to this probably hate confrontation. And it's because of the feeling you get in your body. And actually, I was thinking about what you said and the boundaries you were setting, and I was like, how many times do you think people who've listened to this and us have been on a yard or been in a situation with our horse where someone has either thought that they knew better or tried to give advice or put you in a situation, like a coach has put you in a situation that you were uncomfortable with, and you have to make a choice in that moment to either back down, go quiet, or stand your ground. And in either of those situations, sometimes you walk away with that horrible feeling, and then you, like you said, you've got to go and ride or you've got to go and be with your horse. So that actually is quite a useful technique. I might do that. Maybe we'll all be shaking up and down the country.
definitely. I'll like do a little dance. It doesn't have to necessarily be like a shake, but like, I don't know if you've seen the trend on social media recently where it's like, just stop, dance it out, like Meredith in
Grey's Anatomy. Yes.
And it is
Meredith and Christina. I love it.
Yeah, love them. But it's a thing in your nervous system. So if ever you do find yourself on the yard and you've had a bit of a hard time, even it could have been your horse that maybe was having a hard time that gave it to you. So like you were catching them in and it was windy and they were a bit all over you and they were like a bit rude or a bit pushy or whatever it may have been for whatever reason, whether that was because they were feeling a bit over their limit. And you're then like, okay, I plan to ride and I would still like to ride, but I need to let go of that little moment that I've just had. Or your yard, Meredith, what was her name? Marjorie. Your yard Marjorie said, you didn't put your wheelbarrow away and da-da-da-da-da. And you had perfectly valid reason for not having put your wheelbarrow away or something. And you feel a bit that feeling, like Rhi was saying, that horrid feeling that you get. Have a little dance. Do a little dance. Do a little shake. Do whatever you need.
I'm going to do this. If this resonates with you, please, and you're someone who posts on social media, next time you do it, can you film the dance and tag us? Because I would die to make this a thing. It's just, I would die.
This would be so
dancing it out for Marjorie.
And I just think, we need to have, especially winter is hard with horses. And I think that's why we wanted to talk about it, because this will come at a time where you guys will probably be listening to this in the dark because it's just not very much daylight going on at the moment. It's getting better, but it is dark, isn't it? And it's muddy. I want to talk about mud today, definitely, because I actually did something very cool this week that is pretty life-changing for us at the yard. And we're going to, I think it's important to have some stand in solidarity with the horse community, isn't it? Because winter is a struggle. We forget about it in August, don't we? And then January rolls around and we're all like, why do we have horses? Why was this our life choice?
I don't know about you as well, and I say this now being on full livery, although I've had, share horses and loan horses on DIY and worked on yards, but I always feel like you get into this false sense of security because November, December, like it gets a bit colder and it gets a bit wetter and stuff, but you're like, this isn't that bad, why did I think winter was so bad? January comes and you're like, this is the worst, this is awful.
And it's like 20 weeks long.
Yeah.
January for me feels like it starts on Boxing Day because you kind of have this like run up to Christmas and everything slows down a bit, and then Boxing Day comes and then it's kind of like this weird time. And with horses, so I don't really get like time off over Christmas because horses, you can't just turn them off like you can the computer. And so you have to just keep doing stuff, right? And so it kind of feels like this perpetual state of doing. And one thing that I've definitely lent into, that's just Ralph shaking his ears in the background, if everybody heard that. Sorry about that. He's doing really well, by the way, everyone. He's happily out of his crate. Maybe we'll update you on Ralph later. But it's this feeling with horses of like, it never stops. Nothing ever stops. And in winter, it doesn't stop, but then it's really hard work too. Like, it's an uphill struggle through deep mud, and you're like, this is relentless, this feels really hard work, and you'll probably find yourself having more moments like that you need to shake it out because you're like, oh, this is such hard work. And one thing, and I don't know about you, Rhi, I think that maybe you were forced to do this because of Harley's little bump on his head, but we should be slowing down at this time of year. Nature is telling us you have less daylight, everything is harder. Just lean into that a little bit. And I've really tried to do that this year. Like, we've had less horses and I haven't invited so many horses back. I could have had more horses in for training, but I decided actually I'm going to have a bit of an easier time. And it's like, I've really noticed an improvement in my mental health because I have just been actually behaving how I should behave at this time of year by doing slightly less and resting slightly more.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this narrative of like, let's look at what the seasons are doing. Let's look at what animals are doing. And I used to be somebody, and I don't know if it's because I've now got a younger horse and I've been forced to slow down a bit with him, like in moments when he's growing and he's finding things difficult, you have to back off, because otherwise you're going to ruin their confidence, your confidence. It just doesn't work. Prior to that, though, I think if you've ever had a horse who's had a long-term injury, or even if you haven't, if you're just really excited to be an owner, you kind of feel like seize the day, like every day could be your last day, like, you know, you've got to do things while you can because you never know what's around the corner. Like, that's the energy that we're supposed to have as owners. And also this idea that, as you said, we should be perpetually working towards things and always on and doing stuff with our horses. And like you said, like, there have been moments when he's been growing, but also this year, literally, I had 2 weeks off work and sod's law, Harley bangs his head in the stable on his little breakfast bar, and he had a big lump just where your brow band would meet the headpiece, and so obviously riding was like a big no-go. And so he had about 10 days off, and I went up and saw him every day, and we did our grooming and our usual little cuddles and everything, but we were forced to slow down, and like nothing happened. Like, there were no consequences, bad consequences to doing that. I still got the time with my horse. When I picked him back up again, he felt great. He's super happy and jolly and happy to work. So I think, you know, this wouldn't work for everyone if you're on a fitness schedule or you're rehabbing, but I think the fear of slowing down, or the fear of what that would do to your horse, but also maybe judgment, etc., actually doing it kind of feels quite good, and bad things don't happen all the time.
No, and actually good things happen. And on that topic, I spoke about this recently on one of my patron podcasts. I do like a Q&A every month, and somebody asked me in my December one, they said, I'm not going to be able to exercise my horse over Christmas. I have lots of family commitments. I'm struggling with the consistency. What's your take on that? And what I came back with and said, and what I actually did with my own horses over Christmas, was I gave them purposeful time off. So I chose from X date to X date, I was not going to be exercising them. They go in the field every day. And that is obviously, if they can't have turnout, then exercise is important. But if you can just let your horse have downtime in the field, then it's okay to do so. Because doing things inconsistently actually is potentially more harmful than giving them proper rest. Like, giving them a good amount of time, a fortnight is a lovely amount of time for a horse. They don't lose very much fitness within a fortnight or 10 days like you had with Harley. They don't lose loads of fitness, but what they do gain is some softness in their muscles. They really properly rest. And one of my own horses, Zora, she loves to work. Like, she really enjoys her job and she's very up for it. But she'd got a little bit like swishy with me and a bit not happy when I was tacking her up. And I've given her this fortnight. I think it was maybe slightly longer than a fortnight by the finish. And she's like really pleased to be having had a break. And I think, yeah, it's like you say, like there's this kind of like this pressure maybe from others. Oh, well, you know, you've got your Christmas holiday, so you should be riding every day. And maybe that suits you. Maybe that is what you want to do. But then in the first 2 weeks when you're going back to work and you're finding work very stressful, give your horse a break. It's totally okay. 2 weeks is not going to be a big detriment. Even if you are, you know, bringing them back into work from rehab, you could maybe say, okay, I'm just going to plateau for 2 weeks. I'm not going to step it up to the next step. I'm going to say, okay, I'll stick with just walking for half an hour every day or whatever, not increase it to add the trot or whatever it might be. That is absolutely okay. You know, we don't have to be in this endless summer. It's not necessary.
Like, life is hard enough. Like, your horse is supposed to be your hobby, for most of us, your enjoyable space. Like, it's hard enough over Christmas with family and other pressures. I'm curious though, Miri. I think the thing that stopped me from doing, like, quote unquote, a break before is this idea that you need to turn a horse away to get the benefit of it, because I can't do that on my yard and I'm not going to move them just to do the 2 weeks. So for me, the 10 days was like, he just went out overnight, came in during the day, gave him a groom, and we carried on like that. And I guess, I mean, I don't know, how did you do it with your horses? Because I think that holds some people back.
I did exactly what you did. It was the other way around. They go out in the day and in at night. They still had all of their needs met. But they just weren't asked anything in that time. and they came. They definitely, and it was really interesting actually. Blondie, we had been doing like very easy work. If you guys don't know who Blondie is one of my horses, and she's quite complicated. And she was diagnosed with PSD, so proximal suspensory desmitis. It basically means like scarring to the suspensories through using them wrong for a long period of time. And I think that it was from having poor hoof balance behind, and then basically living in tension from having uncomfortable hormones, and also her PSSM that went untreated until I bought her a few years ago now. And anyway, she's a complicated horse, and so working with her is quite, like, has to be very consensual. She's not your normal horse. You can't just tack her up when you fancy it. She tells you very strictly yes or no with things. And after about 10 days of her being on holiday, she started coming over to the fence and watching me when I'd started working with the training liveries. Yeah, so I gave the training liveries a whole week off, the week over Christmas. I've never done that before, by the way. In the 10 years I've been running my business, I have worked constantly, and that was something I learned last year, is that I don't think I've ever actually acknowledged when I was tired before. And so that's quite a stressful place to be in your life. We'll talk about mental health another day maybe, but for me, giving the horses any kind of a break has been quite rare, and so I chose to give my own horses slightly longer, so that then in that week after Christmas I was only working with the long-term training liveries that I've got on my yard. And it was just so nice because she came over and she was like, my turn soon? Could you would I be able to do something? And I was like, good, this is a great place to get to, because you're now asking me to interact rather than it always being, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. And I think, yeah, like, that's so cool. Like, we don't have to do anything with our horses, you know, and I think that's the thing that's coming up more and more. Like, I spend a lot of time on the ground with my horses. I probably spend more time on the ground with my horses than I do riding them, really. And that's okay. If you never want to ride your horse again, that's okay. If you want to just do the groundwork, train them to do liberty, teach them to do party tricks, you're allowed to do that. You're also allowed to ride them. But I think there's this kind of mentality that has started to show up, which I love so much, is that we can fall out of love with competing and producing a horse for a goal or a purpose, and just fall back in love with why we fell in love with them in the first place. Because little Miriam, she just loved ponies. She never had a aspiration to go much further than that. And I think, yeah, maybe within rest we get the opportunity to re-establish what it is that is important. I think you encapsulate that so wonderfully with Harley, because you do this for the love of it. There is no financial gain. There is no anything. I do it for work now, and that is a bit shifted the balance for me. So that's why with my own horses, I try to make sure that I don't feel like it is work. But that's one of the reasons why I think I started following you however long ago, because your like passion for the love of it, like the core essence of why we do what we do, is so evident in all of what you create. And yeah, I think that's why we're friends, really. You remind me about that all the time.
Thanks. That's sweet. That's really sweet of you. I think it comes from
fighting, and here we are, like, gushing over each other.
I know, classic. Yeah, I think that I was talking about this with my coach, because she was like, you just have such joy, and like, I think you're so good for Harley. And I think it comes from like having not been able to own a horse for such a long time, never been able to afford it. When I finally could, it was such a like big thing, and that hasn't gone away. We need to take a moment to thank the sponsor of this podcast, Premier Performance Calming Cookies. Miri, you first introduced me to Premier Performance Calming Cookies, and I am obsessed with them. And so why don't you give us a little intro into what they are?
So a calming cookie is a really useful thing. It's like a small amount of calmer that you can give to your horse at a time when they need it. They don't have magnesium in them, and they are really handy to have around. So for example, we used them this year for New Year's Eve. We gave all of the horses on the yard a calming cookie, some of them 2, depending on their size. And what it did was it allowed me to have some peace of mind that if there was a triggering thing, so a stressful situation that the horse was going to be put in, i.e. fireworks, their adrenaline would be less likely to spike. Now, these aren't a replacement for training, and I know that I'm allowed to say that when I am advertising this brand, but they are the a really wonderful addition and such a helpful thing. And I know that you have used them yourself in those situations. How have they helped you?
Yeah, so Harley was 5 when I bought him, and when we were first taking him out to his first competition, his first arena hire, where we knew we were going to be in a different situation, I gave him a couple of calming cookies the night before and then some on the day, and I felt like it just gave him, and me actually, that little bit of extra confidence. I love knowing that I can give that feeling to my horse.
Have a look in the show notes at a very special discount code that we have got in case you fancy trying them out for yourself.
I saw a Facebook post the other day, and if I can find it, we'll put it in the show notes to credit the owner. But it was amazing because you talked about a shift from like not going towards goals and doing maybe more liberty, more on the ground. But this post was basically just like a list of things that was like, to the person who wears matchy, amazing, you look fantastic. I hope you and your horse have a great day. To the person who has the really old coat and is covered in mud, great, amazing that you were able to show up for your horse. For the person who has their horse barefoot, that's great. For a lot of horses, barefoot can be best. Enjoy the journey. For the person who has their horse in shoes, amazing. Sometimes shoes are the only solution for certain horses. Like it just went on like this, and I was like, we might finally be getting to a place where we're just like, what do you want to do? How do you want to show up? How do we want to show up for each other? Because we're slightly off topic here, but I think a lot about the amount of people that have submitted to my Equestrian Money Diaries project, and I was thinking about it of like, we're such an amazing community of like knowledge sharers, and we're so active in all these groups on Facebook, and go on.
You need to tell us what that is, Rhi.
Oh, I'm sorry. You had your hand up and I was like, something's gone wrong with the recording.
I know, because I don't know how to
Equestrian
stop you.
Money
Diaries.
Diary.
How do I stop her so she just explains what Equestrian Money Diaries is? Because there'll be people listening to this podcast that do not follow us, they don't know who we are, they've just found this cool new Equestrian Life podcast and they want to listen. So what are your Equestrian Money Diaries? Because I think they're well cool. So yeah, hit us up with some info.
Good call out. So Equestrian Money Diaries is a project I set up about 5 years ago. It's essentially an anonymous Google form where anybody from around the world can share their horse costs. And I set it up because when I was looking for a horse for the first time, I could not find, for love nor money, detailed, up to date information about owning a horse that would allow me to make like a financially sound decision that also put the welfare of the horse at the front. So I set up this project, and there's now a spreadsheet for 2025 that pulls in automatically like real-time data, all the averages, comparisons to 2024. But the reason I brought that up is because you should fill it in and help others with the resource, but
and
two,
it will be in the show notes.
Because it will be in the show notes. Shout out to our producer for that one. But also because we're such a community of knowledge sharers, we're so tight-knit. Like if you're on any Facebook groups, like the BSJA one, the British Dressage one, the eventing one, there's so much chatter, and often it's really positive. And I always think like we're such a kind of Jekyll and Hyde of a community. Like we have this really dark side that we're known for of being hypercritical of one another. And I suspect that's because our sport is wrapped around the welfare of an animal. Maybe we're getting back to a place where we're a bit more kind to one another, a bit more balanced, and we're using our communities for good. So anyway, we talk about like taking rest over winter, but what about the other side of that, which is like winter training?
Yeah, so I think that this is an important time as well to maybe be thinking ahead a little bit. So it doesn't mean you have to be doing, but you can be planning. And some of those things are, for me, with my own horses, is I'm really looking at where their foundations are. So where have they got weak spots? What am I thinking of improving, and how can I start to do that, basically? So one of my training like tips, I suppose, that I wanted to share today was, instead of thinking about doing all of the things that you're going to be doing at 100 miles an hour, it's the new year, new me, all of that sort of stuff. It's just sitting quietly with a pen and paper and maybe starting to write down some of the things that you might like to work towards this year, and then how you're going to get there. And I think that's something that's often very lost when we do goal set, is we set the goal, I'm going to jump this bigger jump, I'll go to that show, do this, that and the other, and then we don't break it down far enough to actually get to the point where we know where to start. And that, I think, is something that I've got a bit better at as I go on, and having support in that, I think, is very important, but it can be an exercise that we do with our coaches or with the people around us. or just on our own, literally. It's almost like you want to write your goal at the bottom of the page and then write upwards from there, and then you can start get to the top of, actually, this is where I'm going to begin. So for example, let's use, shall I do a bit of how I do that?
I think you can. Why not?
So for example, if you said, I want to go to a dressage show for the first time this year, I've got a young horse that has been out to some arena hire but has never been to an actual show. My suggestion would be write that down at the bottom of the page, and then you could work up from there and work on the things that you're going to need to have to be able to do that. So for example, you're going to need to be able to load your horse successfully. You're going to need to be able to complete the dressage test successfully. You're going to need to be able to plat successfully. You're going to need to be able to do the incremental things that add up to the sum of riding a dressage test at a show. And then you could break it up even further back from that, because you could say, okay, the loading, the horse can load, but he's quite stressed about it. So then you'd say, okay, I need to work on his ability to be more relaxed around travel. How can I do that? Okay, maybe I could look into some groundwork practice, like the stuff that I talk about on my Patreon, where you learn about how the horses relax fundamentally on their own, and then you've broken that step down enough of the way that then you've got a starting point of, okay, I'm going to practice some groundwork in a rope halter in the arena, so that then when it gets to the point that we're going to be doing the loading, the horse has a knowledge of how to be soft. So it's like that, set yourself the goal and then break it down enough that you actually know where to start. I think that's a really good way to, a really good kind of process to go through at this time of year when it's muddy and you're not riding as much, maybe.
Yeah, I totally agree. I always try and have like 3 yearly goals in mind, and then I do a monthly goal and a weekly goal, and I try and break down towards those. So that's how I do it. But I also find that like having stuff in the diary that's in spring and summer is like so helpful, because you're like, this will end soon and we'll be there. Like I've booked in 2 sort of overnight camps, for example. It's the first time we're going overnight. Really excited. Going with some friends. It's going to be wonderful. One's in April, one's in June. And like having it in the diary is just like such a nice thing to look forward to. And like you said, spending a lot more time just building the fundamentals, building confidence at home. Like I know, for example, I've talked about it with my coach, like you said, planning with a coach, that I want to take Harley cross country in the spring when the ground is, open and whatever. And so that means getting really confident at home, getting confident out hacking, like making sure that all of that's in place so that when we go out cross country, we're like ready. So I love that.
Yeah,
and sure. I don't know if this is like stupid. Maybe it's just me. Okay, I'm going to put myself out there. But I also find that like one way to make the winter just slightly more like nice is like I have a nice flask, and sometimes I'll bring like a hot chocolate, or I'll bake and I'll bring it down to the yard, and like we'll just have coffee and cake together. And like there's something really lovely about that like obviously in the summer everyone's around, but like it makes such a difference. I think
as well that comes. No, I don't think that's weird at all, and I think that comes from shifting the perspective as what are we trying to achieve? Because what you're trying to achieve by taking hot chocolate and some cake is, I would like to go and spend some time with my horse and my friends that are associated with my horse that I maybe don't spend time with outside of that, because those are the things that fundamentally we love. Regardless of whether you're going to go and do loads of riding, actually going and just spending a nice amount of time for yourself is really important. And I think I lose track of that sometimes, and maybe that's actually something that I need to pick back up on, because I don't live where the horses are, and it means that I do kind of go and just work with the horses and then come home again and do my other work like this, or social media stuff, or teaching online, or whatever it might be. And it's kind of like actually remembering to go there and maybe have a cup of tea with a client and sit down and rest while also being somewhere I love is really valid and really important. So I don't think it's silly. I think it's lovely. I think you're lovely.
I think you're lovely. I do think it's slightly different when you're a professional, and I also imagine I'm self-aware enough to know that like I have my horse on full livery, right? So yes, I can rock up with a hot chocolate and just groom my horse, and it's likely that someone else has like waded through the mud to get him in and mucked him out. And so there's probably someone on DIY listening to this who's like, you think a bit of hot chocolate's going to fix all this shit? You're wrong. But I will say that when I had Lone Horses on DIY, I did do the same thing. I just wanted to put that out there.
I still think it's valid, because if you're having such a shit time and you're going to the yard and you're like, oh my god, this is shit, having some hot chocolate in between catching your horse in and mucking out your stable is probably going to make it nicer. So stick to your guns, Reed. Don't back down. Hot chocolate makes everything better. Speaking of mud, we need to talk about mud. Because
Speaking of mud, what a segue. Oh, sorry. I thought you meant chocolate as mud. And you meant the mud of the field.
I meant the mud of Well, it's funny how different people's brains work, isn't it? Because that made total sense to me. And you were like, what? That doesn't make sense. Anyway.
It's because my brain's powered by chocolate, Miri. That's basically it. It's powered by a sweet tooth, yeah.
So,
go on, mud.
Yeah, so we have this track at the yard, and it's hell, right? It never used to be this bad, and I don't know what happened to it. I think a pipe somewhere deep in the ground has caused a problem, and it's basically like a constant trickle of water, and it would be an enormous job to dig it up. And it's not on me to do that, unfortunately, and I have made my landlords aware of it, but it's not top of the priority list. So there we are. There's a very muddy track, and the fields that you get to when you've walked down said muddy track, it's lovely. They're really nice. They're well drained. They're not that muddy, but there's obviously, it's a pain in the backside if you put your horse in a clean field and then you bring them up down the track and they're covered in mud. So this week I invented no, I didn't invent them. My God, imagine I'd be so rich. I invested in some mud control mats. Have you heard of these?
I've read about these on Facebook, actually, because I'm old, apparently. But I've been in the groups. People have been talking about them.
On the groups. Yes, mud mats. They're amazing. I got them from Jelka Limited, and I'm going to shout them out because they were such a nice company to deal with. They were really friendly and really helpful, and I can't recommend them enough. They're like a rubber mat that has holes in it, so water can flow through them as such, but you just lay them down on top of the mud, and then it's like creates like a walkway. You know, like you go to a festival and they've got those mats that people walk on. I've not been to very many festivals, but I've seen it. I don't have time for that.
Seen it on the gram.
Yeah, so and so we bought some, and we laid them out, and I have to say as well, I actually couldn't be there when we put them down on the ground, and so Lucy and Aoife, who work for me, Aoife is my apprentice, they put them out, and I love them so much for it because it was really hard work. There will be some footage appearing on the gram at some point of us putting the mats out, but they're life-changing. If you have a muddy problem, sweat, honestly, even if you bought 6 and put them in your gateway, I bought the bigger ones that are like rectangular instead of square, and they really are brilliant. And I do think that they are something that is probably, now that we are realising that, like, you know, the weather systems are changing in the UK, are going to become something that are really valid, because horses do need dry space. And I have seen some pretty upsetting videos on social media recently of people being like, oh, the horses just have to get out in the field. And I'm like, yeah, but you need to, you know, we need management systems basically to look after the fields better. So these are great, fantastic, highly recommend them. They're really good. Once you've put them down, they're
So do you like put them down then they stay there forever, like all through the seasons they're just permanent, or do you bring them up again?
Yeah, in theory, yes. You would leave them there for as long as you need them. Ideally, I think you would put them down before it got muddy. But often us equestrians don't think ahead like that, do we? So we just let it get terrible and then we do something about it. That's in my head anyway, what unfortunately has happened this time. But yeah, that you would leave them there and then they would just stay in the ground. It would get hard and sunny and whatever, and then it would mean that they formed like a good base. I actually heard about them from a track livery that uses them. And you can put sand, because they've got holes in them, you can put sand on the top. And so it forms like a more consistent road, essentially. Ours are a bit like wobbly because of that we haven't put sand on them. But they work fantastic. They're really good, really, really good things. Have you got any winter mud hacks that you want to share?
I was
You
just
can
trying
say-
to think of some.
You can say no.
I don't think I do. I tell you, well, no, I mean, I tell you what I will shout out is the winter hoof care thing. Beauty bloggers talk about their empties.
They're empties? No, what?
Yeah, okay, I'll introduce you to this concept. So, I don't know if it's still a thing, but like back in the day on YouTube, beauty bloggers would be like, here are my empties, guys. And it would be like all the things that they've bought and they've like emptied them because they love them so much.
Okay.
So that's the concept. So sometimes I talk about my empties which makes no sense to anyone apparently. But the Red Horse Soul Cleanse is banging. Like Red Horse everything, forever and ever, amen. Not an ad. Happy
Agreed.
Customer. That's the one thing I buy over and over. And I think the winter hoof care with Red Horse, with their Soul Cleanse, with their field paste, and what's the one that's like thicker than field paste? Some kind of mud barrier thing. Anyway, whatever. It's really good because it's wet. But that's my only kind of hack. That and hot chocolate, obviously.
And hot chocolate, yeah. Talcum powder is one of mine.
Oh, for the legs.
So yeah, it can be really, really good to prevent mud fever. It's not much good once they've got mud fever. You need the vet, pretty much. There are some treatments that you can use, but if it gets bad, you need the vet. And it's better to call the vet sooner rather than later because they'll give you medicated cream. I think people often leave mud fever too long, and then horses end up with lymphangitis and stuff, and it's a complete chaos. But talcum powder is genuinely really good. It's kind of like forms a bit of a barrier, but more on the skin than on the hair. And it stops all the bad stuff sticking, basically.
Okay. I just thought of one more on the theme of legs. If you're someone who puts brushing boots on your horse, as I am, I've tried lots of different types because Harley wears brushing boots on his front legs always. And the Equilibrium Trizone brushing boots are great in the winter. Well, not only because they have all these great systems that are great for the horse's legs and heat and all the rest of it, but in the winter they're so lightweight that you can scrub them clean, hang them up, and they dry quickly. Whereas I have like neoprene boots and stuff that just don't dry in the winter. If you're not lucky enough to have access to a washing machine and a drying room and all the rest of it, which I don't, I just scrub shit out of the yard, then Equilibrium Trizone brushing boots are the biz.
The biz. You are quite obsessive, aren't you, about cleaning things? You like cleaning things. It's your fave.
I do. Oh yeah, well, thanks for that observation. I do like cleaning things, actually. Yeah.
Not in like a bad way. I have a washing machine and a dryer.
No, it has
so maybe
become a
I'm
bit of a
obsessed with
thing.
cleaning things, but I've never seen anyone scrub stuff like you scrub stuff. I remember like you'd use a pair of boots and then wash them straight away.
Yeah.
Well, not wash them, but
Yeah,
scrub them straight away. And that's good. You look after your things. And that is why you have created the Equestrian Money Diaries, because you're that kind of, you really see, understand the value of things. I get it. It's good.
Thanks,
It's nice.
mate. I know, I've become a bit known for like cleaning my Equitexes, which is a slightly weird sub-portion of my personal brand. But like when Nilfisk, just an aside, when Nilfisk, the power washing company, reached out to me last year about collaborating, they were fabulous. They were like, yeah, we've seen your Equitex videos. And I was like, whoa, were there enough? There were so many that it became a thing they'd associate with me. Oh, I thought that was quite funny.
Well,
Anyway.
I mean, it is a good selling point of an Equitex. They are incredibly easy to clean and keep, and they last absolutely ever. I've got a client that this isn't an advert, but it could be. Maybe one day it will be. Maybe Equitex will sponsor us one day. But I've got a client that has been in and out of training livery with me for like many, many years. Like 4 years. And I remember when she first started, I suggested that she got an Equitex because her pony's very rolly. He's like a Connemara and he's extremely round. And she bought one, and she has been back and forth on training livery for various reasons, not because the pony's a disaster, but like she had back surgery and all sorts of different things. She still has the same Equitex, and I swear to God it looks brand new. Like they just, if you look after them the right way, you wash them at 30 degrees, you brush them off, you don't wash them loads and loads and loads, they look so immaculate. That's something I want to talk about actually, is like you don't need the new stuff, right, guys? You don't need it. I think that in 2025 a really important like maybe thing that we can all encourage each other to do is that you don't necessarily need the new X or Y. You know, buying things that are going to last you for a very long time is maybe more sustainable and better for the planet, that we all need to look after, than constantly buying the next thing. Oh, I need another coloured saddle pad. Oh, I need a new pair of boots. Like you were saying, how long have you had those Trizone boots for? Probably years, right? Like, I have got rugs, I'm not joking you, that I have owned since I was 16 years old. I'm 32. They are still fine.
Yeah.
They maybe aren't as, like, they wouldn't have the same weight as they did when I was 16, but they're a brilliant layer. I have lots of horses that come in and out for training, and sometimes they don't have the perfect rug, so I don't throw them away. I patch them up and I keep going. You don't need new stuff all the time, and I think, yeah, hopefully we can be the kind of influencers that help influence that kind of thing. Like you were saying, like, influencing people with the things that you actually really use, not just that someone's given to you. I think that's a important mindset to have.
Yeah, I mean, there are 3 ways I think people are doing, and I think people are starting to do this more and more anyway. It's the whole buy once, buy well. Like, if you have the privilege of having a budget to get something a bit more expensive, like an Equitex, I think people are doing that more and more. The second is, aside from my line of disaster, like patching things up, changing things that you already have. Like, I have a Premier Equine rug that Woody ripped all the way down the back. I don't know what happened. I think he got caught with a tree or something. And I patched it up and it is fabulous. I still have it, still use it on Harley. And the third one, and this is not a hot take, but I've just discovered Vinted. I've just started like actually getting stuff from Vinted. I wanted these boots and I've been trying to not do a no buy, but I've been trying to be really conscious about my purchase behaviour in 2025, and I wanted these boots, and I was like, I just wonder if anyone's bought them and doesn't want them on Vinted. I found these boots in my size, in the box, mint condition, like mint. The bottoms weren't even scuffed. I think this person had bought them and obviously like forgotten to take them back. And I was like, it just makes like buying secondhand stuff so much easier. Not just horsey stuff, but everything. It's like charity shops, but
And there's some good apps. There's some horsey apps there.
yes, there are. What I've heard about these, and also Facebook Marketplace. I know it can be a bit scammy, but Facebook Marketplace, I've always had quite a good experience on. Miri, on the other hand,
Scammy. I have been scammed so many times on Facebook Marketplace. I can't even bear to tell you about it. There was 1 month I got scammed 3 times in 1 month with 3 separate scams.
I don't know how this happens to you.
I'm just a lovely.
I've never been scammed on Marketplace.
I tried to. The one on Marketplace was bad. I wanted a Dyson Airwrap because I've kind of got quite curly, kind of frizzy hair. I mean, you'll have seen on Instagram. It's terrible, isn't it? Sticks up all over the place. So I wanted a Dyson Airwrap so that I could blow dry. I'm doing air quotes. My hair. And I saw this guy advertising one for like £100, and I was like, perfect. It's not even not that far away. Perfect. And I sent the man a £50. I sent
Miri, stranger danger.
I know. I sent him a deposit, and my partner said to me, he was like, "Was the first red flag not that it was a man selling it?" And I was like, maybe. He was also bald in the picture, so he definitely wouldn't have needed it. Anyway, so yeah, I Facebook Marketplace can be a bit scammy, so do be careful. But it also can be a magical place. And there's an app, I think it's called Equipped. I'm not sponsored by them anyway, but it's a good app. It's clever, and it's like horsey specific eBay, I guess, because you can also place bids on things rather than having to agree to like the full price that they give. So yeah, it's good. There's so much we can do to be more sustainable. You know, horses are a luxury at the end of the day, aren't they? And if we can do things to make our footprint a little smaller, then I think that we should try.
100%.
There was something I wanted to talk about. I didn't speak about the dead body in the woods. I said it at the beginning and I never told the story.
Oh, because you went on to Marjorie.
I went on to Marjorie. So I've had a traumatic week. So yesterday I went hacking and I was riding and leading, so it was quite difficult to film. But as we were hacking along, I suddenly saw what looked like a body hung from a tree. Now it sounds really dramatic, right? But it was in quite a like peculiar place, like pretty well hidden, very wooded. Like nobody could see it from the road. Like not that many people walk where we ride. And I was like, this is really strange. And you can go on my Instagram and see what I was talking about if you like. But, or my TikTok, actually. It'll live forever on TikTok. It'll only end up on a story.
I was going to say, it's not going to be on your stories.
No.
Yeah.
and it was like with a rope at the top and a chain, and then a long adult male-sized body thing wrapped. This is the weird part.
It was very creepy.
It was really creepy, wrapped in white material with tape round it. And the girl, Aoife, who works for me, who's the apprentice, she's only 16, she was like, I'm not going anywhere near that. That is terrifying. And I'm like, it's dead. If it is a dead body, it's dead. So don't worry. Anyway, it was really creepy, and I had to go back and investigate on foot today so that I could solve the story. And it turns out it's a punching bag, but it's still
I saw that someone... It is weird,
yes.
But my favourite part of that story was people guessing what it was. And there was one that was like Marjorie's, the last person that fell out with Marjorie or something, just super dark, but also kind of hilarious.
Yeah, because it turns out it's actually Marjorie's neighbour. So it's like 2 doors down from Marjorie's house. So it's not, sadly, it is just a punching bag. It's still quite strange because it's a good 500 yards from their house. Like, is that necessary?
Well, I guess if they own the wood, like, why not? What else are you going to do with it? The wood, I mean.
Yeah, I guess so.
Train outside.
I don't know.
Also, if they need to hang it from something,
maybe
you will now.
I don't know. Just freaked me out. It was like it was a bit of a drama because we weren't sure. And then people on TikTok started telling me that they actually have seen dead bodies when they've been out hacking, and I thought, okay. That's very strange.
Well, I'm sorry to anyone who is listening to this dark in the morning at their yard on their own, or indeed late at night. Sorry in advance.
That thing in the bushes is probably just a punch bag. Don't worry, it's not a dead body. Let's hope. I pray for you.
On this podcast, we've talked a lot about setting goals and winter routines. And if you're looking for a way to help you write down and achieve your goals, breaking them down into smaller steps, then you may find one of my equestrian planners useful. These diaries were designed by me, every single page, for riders, and they allow you to set 3 yearly goals, a monthly goal and a weekly goal, as well as giving you areas to keep track of every single ride that you do during the week and reflecting on it. They're completely undated, so you can start at any time, and sustainability is built into the way that I design them. To learn more, visit my Etsy shop, Riding with Rhi, or send me a DM on Instagram at Riding with Rhi.
We have also been talking a lot on this podcast about goals and about where to start and maybe finding it hard to know where the beginning is. If you are looking for some winter inspiration, it doesn't have to be winter, it could be any season in fact, but a place to start with your training. I have a wonderful online training platform that I have been creating over the last 4 or 5 years now. I have over 100 videos, lots of podcasts where you can learn how I train my horses. So if you're looking for a place for inspiration, on relaxation, on a more dynamic way to work with your horses, then you can head over to my website, hackettequine.com, and onto the online training page, and you can find the packages there. So we're going to make a tradition on this podcast, and I hope you guys will join in with that tradition. Every week, we are going to be either asking for some stories, which is what we're going to do this week, or we're going to be asking you to send in your questions, and then we're going to have a little agony Miri, get it?
Miri.
Agony
wink, wink.
Miri. Spelled with an R-H-I, just in case anybody missed that. Little section where we either read out your hilarious stories, which we hope you will share with us this week, or your questions, and then we'll answer your questions. So this week, we would like for you to send us, if you found, what are the weird things that you found out hacking, basically.
Weird experiences. Yeah. Also, any ghost stories, because I'm kind of intrigued by that now.
A ghost
Feel
story?
free.
Oh, I've got some of those.
Yeah. Well, maybe you can tell one as well.
Yeah.
But Miri and I are both on Instagram, and you can find our handles in the show notes. And if you want to send us a voice note, that's also fine. We'll read out your voice note. Not read out, we'll press play, and your voice will play on the podcast. I don't know why I'm explaining voice notes to people like people don't know what they are. You can voice note all right. It's up to you.
Yeah, and I think that would be fun. And then we'll get onto some more serious questions one day. But let's start with something jolly, like a spooky story or a dead body in the woods.
I've very much enjoyed this podcast. We've really covered some ground.
I think we have. We've gone a long way, and I think I'm just really excited to have this opportunity to share with you lot. And yeah, I think it's going to be a really, really fun project to have, and I'm really looking forward to carrying on.
Same time next week.
Thanks for listening, guys.
See you then.
Bye for now.
Bye.